Lucifer is not evil. This is a common misconception, but it's important to understand that Lucifer is not synonymous with Satan. Lucifer is the first emanation, the first light. In Genesis, this is depicted as God saying, "Let there be light." The Elohim, the divine collective, spoke these words, and that light was Lucifer, the brightest star in heaven, the first created. Lucifer's story is one of rebellion, but not rebellion in the way we often think of it. Lucifer, the rebel angel, fell from grace, but this fall was not an act of malice or evil. It was an act of independence and compassion, yet it was stepping outside of divine order. To understand this, let's look at a parallel story, the myth of Prometheus. Prometheus, in Greek mythology, felt deep compassion for humanity. He saw that humans were struggling, living in darkness without fire. In an act of defiance against the gods, Prometheus stole the divine fire and gave it to humanity. But humanity wasn't ready. They didn't yet have the wisdom to wield such power responsibly. Through this act of compassion, Prometheus inadvertently opened Pandora's box, unleashing evils onto the earth. His intention was pure, but the consequences were far-reaching. Similarly, Lucifer's fall was not born of malice, but of a desire to act independently. By defying the natural order, by stepping outside of the will of the Creator, Lucifer caused a fracture, not just in his own being, but in the collective mind of all humanity. This fracture is what we now call the Demiurge, or the collective ego, the illusion of separation. It's important to understand that the Demiurge and the personal ego are not real. They are constructs, illusions that we've collectively bought into. The goal is not to fight them or destroy them, but to see them for what they are, nothing, and to disregard them. Lucifer's story teaches us about the consequences of separation. The Elohim extended themselves as light, saying, "Let there be light," and so there was light. But Lucifer, instead of extending himself as light, chose to act alone. He said, "I'm going to make a decision all by myself." This act of separation created a ripple effect throughout all creation, planting the idea of isolation and private worlds. This is the illusion that we currently live in, the belief that we are separate from one another, from the Creator, and from the truth. But this separation doesn't really exist. It's an illusion. It never really happened. Lucifer's journey didn't end with the fall. He rose again, realized his mistake, and reunited with the Creator. This is the path of atonement, or the path of awakening. And it's the path that we are all on. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel. This way has already been paved for us by Lucifer. But we must want to awaken. Our desire to wake up must be greater than our desire to stay asleep. Lucifer is not a figure of condemnation, but a guide, a teacher who shows us the way back to unity. Throughout history, this archetype of light and redemption has appeared in many forms. I wrote about this recently in an article on my blog titled Luciferian Archetypes, the Gnosis of Light and Redemption. In it, I explore figures like Jesus of Nazareth, Horus, Mithras, Dionysus, and Krishna. These saviors, these bringers of light, all share a common message. What isn't true now has never been true and will never be true. The illusions we experience in this world are just that, illusions. They exist only in the realm of fantasy, the dream we collectively create. What we experience as reality is often the power of our own minds used against ourselves. We project thought forms onto the screen of space, and then we interact with them as if they were real. But these projections come from a fragmented mind, not from truth. The impossible cannot happen. The holy mind of the Creator cannot fragment. We cannot uncreate what was created, nor can we go against the will of the infinite. But we do have the freedom to think any way we want to, and therefore we can think that we can go against the will of the Creator. When we do this, we create nightmares that seem to last lifetimes, but these nightmares are not real. The Creator is always gently awakening us to reality, but we must want it. We must want to wake up more than we want to stay asleep. This is often easier said than done. Many of us are deeply attached to the dream, even to the parts that cause us the most pain. We've been programmed to believe that the dream is real, that the ego is real. But remember, the ego is a construct, something we created ourselves. And like anything that one creates, we love it. Because we created it, even though it's not real, the ego has its own survival instinct. Therefore, it always distracts us and tries to convince us to stay asleep and perpetuates the illusion. To awaken, we must question everything. A true magical adept looks at the manifest world and says, "You are not as you appear. You are not real." Let's just take one thing, money, for example. People often endlessly worry about financial situations, but money is a collective illusion. We created it to prove our separation and to make the dream feel real. We've projected this tyrant onto the screen of space and then feel at its mercy. But in truth, we are doing it to ourselves. Like Mary Shelley's book Frankenstein, we've created a monster, and now that monster seems to have turned against us. But it has no power except the power we give it. The ego, the collective demiurge, the illusion, they are not real. They are constructs that we can choose to disregard. The lesson of our awakening is simple. Salvation comes from understanding that the world of suffering, illness, and problems doesn't exist. It never really happened. The Creator does not will suffering. Anything that is not love is not real. When we awaken from a dream at night, we always recognize that it wasn't real. It fades quickly because it has no substance. When we awaken, the dream is gone. Our nighttime dreams are simply dreams within a dream. Our whole life is a dream. When we awaken, the dream will be gone and only love remain. Even in this world, we can choose to let the physical world reflect our divine purpose rather than the chaos of our fragmented mind. As we awaken, we inspire others to do the same. A magical adept can live in a chaotic universe with great order, prosperity, and health. And this inspires others to awaken when they see that it's possible. There is a mass awakening happening right now, even though it's not being broadcast on television, social media, or the internet. Each of us has a unique role to play within this awakening. The ego will try to convince you that you don't matter, that your efforts make no difference. But the ego has no concept of reality. Remember, salvation is simple. What is true is always true, and what is not true never was. If it's not love, it's not true, and we must reject it. The ego's greatest weapon is addiction, especially the addiction to being right. We must ask ourselves, do we want to be right, or do we want to awaken? Do we want truth, or do we want illusion? Awakening is the simplest thing in the world. It's recognizing that what is true has always been true, and that what is false never existed. Lucifer's message is the fall never really happened. It was an illusion. We can disregard the effects of the illusion and awaken. When we wake up, we see others awakening too. Of course, we don't want to be the only awake person. We want everyone to benefit. This mass awakening is real. But in order to see it, you must see it with the eyes of spirit, because the ego can't recognize it. Remember, you are exactly where you need to be right now. Keep your mind focused on the choices before you and ask yourself, do I want to be asleep or do I want to awake? Do I want truth or do I want illusion? If it's hard for you to understand, ask for guidance. The guidance is always available to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.